Good evening and welcome to Backyard Farmer. I'm Kim Todd and we're happy to be back for another hour of good gardening. You can get in touch with us if you have gardening questions by dialing 1-800-676-5446. If that question can wait or you have pictures to share with us, send us an email to byf@unl.edu. Do tell us where you live. Give us as much information as you can. Do not forget to check out our YouTube channel. Follow us during the week on Facebook. And we have some samples, and you have some rather large beetles, Wayne.
I did bring some rather large beetles tonight. So oftentimes in the show or at the office, we get these rather large grubs that get brought in. They find them in their stumps or in a big branch that's fallen down, and that's what I see come in. However, these are the adults. These are sometimes known as hermit beetles. Also, the genus is Osmoderma. We have a single species in Nebraska, so if you see one, it's that one, no others. The larvae feed in rotting wood. So that rotting wood is not from them, it's from something else in that still living tree, fallen tree, or that stump. So there are recyclers, so they're great for that. Just a little bit of a note, the larvae do feed in those rotting logs and wood areas for 2 to 3 years. So up in our neck of the woods, more likely 3 years. As you go further south in their range, it's more like 2 years. Just one of those great recyclers that come around. These do feed on tree sap that oozes. The adults do. They're not causing those wounds, but they're there because the wounds are there.
Perfect. Excellent. Thank you. All right, Terry.
So tonight I wanted to prove that we all have weed issues in our yard. I had 6 trees come down last fall. I am now dealing with lots more sun than I've ever had in that space. I have this ground cherry coming up. I have mowed it and weed-eated it several times. And you can see that I've been trying to get rid of it, but now it's probably going to end up having to be sprayed now that it's getting cooler just to finally get rid of it. But I've tried manual control beyond just pulling it, but it will probably be now chemical control.
Weeds won, Terry nothing.
Pretty much.
All right, Amy, what do you have tonight?
So Wayne was nice enough to bring me the sample of cucumbers that they have in their garden right outside of Madison County. And what we're seeing on these cucumber leaves are these big brown spots. And he said these are not on the new leaves. This is the older leaves. So took a little closer look at them. If you look over here, you're starting to see some black structures in there, black fruiting bodies in there. After further evaluation, this is all environmental. Most likely due to the heat and watering patterns. The black patterns that we're seeing in these older lesions is alternaria. So it's just the fungus sitting there starting to break down that dead organic matter, putting it into a form that the plant can use later on in its life, or even next growing season. So at this point in time, those are helpful, guys. I know we talk about alternarias. There's some species that are not favorable in tomatoes, for example, but on our cucumbers right now, it's perfectly fine. But most likely this is all environmental. It's been a rough year between heat and trying to get water and then sun scald on top of it, so.
All right, tough luck, Wayne.
Oh, well.
Okay, John, what do you have for us?
Well, everyone here is, has weird things and doom and gloom, and I get to talk about fun things. So you hear us talk a lot about All-America selections, and when we do updates for the garden, and Terry talks about All-America selections. I'm a trial judge, and so I get to try the things before they're on the market, and this is one of our trials. So we're trying these Lunchbox Peppers. So these they look like hot peppers, but they're actually little sweet peppers, and we're actually comparing those. So these are not on the market. I don't know what the name of it is, but we're comparing them to these two that are already on the market. And the fun thing is that they all look different. What we're comparing is actually disease resistance. And so they all have similar flavor profiles, but what I'm really looking at is disease resistant because they're supposed to be resistant to some bacterial diseases. And so we shall see.
That'll be exciting.
So maybe next year, if you see an orange Lunchbox Pepper All-America Selections, it will be this pepper.
That put Amy out of a job.
It would, but bacterial streak and peppers is just awful.
All right. Wayne, you get the first round of questions. This is actually a Stanton, Nebraska viewer. simply wants to know what kind of insect lives here in this particular hole and what we can tell him about it.
Well, thanks for the scale. That's always very helpful when we have a scale. So we know this hole's roughly 1/2 inch in diameter. As I look at this, there's kind of a mound, and then going down to the bottom of the screen, you see there's more of that mound kind of trailing off. I think this is a cicada killer wasp hole that's been rained on or sprinkled on in the lawn and just been watered down a little bit, but it's still active because that main hole is still nice and smooth and open.
All right. Your next one comes to us from North Platte, and he has a magnolia in North Platte, 2 shrubs in the backyard. They are flowering for the second time. Our second picture here, I think, shows a little bit more. It's the flowers, but they look good, then they start to look like they're being eaten by something. And we had a little back and forth on this about magnolias in North Platte, but then his descriptor was he has found some of your little beasties in there.
Yeah, per that description, there's 2 things that it sounds like he's describing. One are earwigs with the pinchers on the back end. They do sometimes feed on flowers, so that could be the damage we're seeing there. The other things are small, light colored, most likely inside a flower like that, thrips. And
So-
most of the time they're not enough to cause an issue.
All right,
Then
just not
they're not-
perfect magnolias.
Right.
Okay. And we want perfection in our landscapes. Right.
I'm not willing to put that much work in.
Terry, you have 3 pictures on this one. This comes to us from an Omaha viewer, and it's actually invading a sheep pasture. It's expanding. He says the sheep do not eat this thing. So the first picture is kind of the whole thing, and then we have one a little closer and one further, and it's already gone to flower. He sent us some good information. He wants to know what it is and how to get rid of it.
So I think this is it is an astor. I think it's heather astor. What you're seeing now in this picture is actually the seed head. So it's the flower. It's done flowering. You can either, maybe swap a goat for the sheep. Maybe do some trading if you know somebody that has a goat, or basically you're going to have to go out with either something like a broadleaf weed killer and kind of spray out that those big spaces.
All right, and your next question is a simple what is this? And we've had this before, but then the what is this is usually followed by how to get rid of it.
Yeah, this is Jimson weed. This is in the same family as tomatoes and peppers and stuff. This is not edible. Do not try to eat this. If you're going to remove it, you can pull it out by hand, but you're going to have to make sure that you put gloves on and long sleeves because it can kind of irritate skin and stuff. So that's what you're going to have to do.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, Amy, you have 2 pictures on this first one.
Okay.
This is a Lincoln viewer, and she sent us just the leaves, but she sent us the up and the down. And what is going on?
So on the bottom sign is our real classic sign. This is cedar, apple, take your blank on your name, cedar, apple, rust, so on and so forth. And those are the fruiting bodies that are going back to the cedar trees. And it causes the tree to die prematurely or lose its leaves or senesce earlier. And with the drought conditions that we're having, we're probably seeing it a little bit earlier than normal. So biggest thing right now is as those leaves drop off, sanitation is huge. We want to remove those leaves as much as we can. You can compost them as long as your compost is coming up to heat. And then next year, you're going to want to do a fungicide application on that tree at leaf bud.
All right, and 2 more pictures, and this comes to us from Hordeville, and this is Bradford pear.
So right like the other one, this is cedar pear rust then, since it's on Bradford pear. Once again, you get those little tendrils coming out, and that's going back to the cedar tree. So sanitation and spray next spring when you're getting leaf emergence.
All right, thanks, Amy. All right, John, your first one here comes to us from Gibbon, and this particular viewer, she grew Brussels sprouts, and they look like this, but she wonders whether the Brussels will Brussel before the frost gets them.
I think there is a possibility that you'll get some production on these. As we get into cooler weather, they will actually thrive a little bit better. Brussels sprouts are one of those things, though, that's like really tricky to grow. They have to have like specific conditions. So I would just, have a little hope, have a little faith, and hang out, because they'll do a little better and start growing a little more when it cools down. It's just been way too hot for our cold crops.
All right, and then you have 3 pictures on this next one. This is a Lincoln viewer. He's never had a problem with his cukes. He does rotate. Everything is doing poorly, of course, but he's wondering, is this reflective heat? Is this spider mites? Is this bad environment? What is this?
All of the above.
Yeah.
So,
exactly.
so option E, all of the above.
Yeah.
So this probably is some heat related. We're just seeing stuff not growing well. But that sort of whitish color on the leaves is indicative of spider mites, which is also a heat related problem because they thrive in the heat. So I think we have a little bit of all the above. So you can try to spray those off. They're sort of, as it cools down, they're not going to be as much of an issue too. So.
All right, thank you, John. Well, we love our trees, turf, and shrubs around our home. Maybe you should think about turning some of those trees and shrubs into something to eat. Edible landscapes are a really great way to maximize that outdoor space and grow something that is both beautiful and delicious. When we talk about edible landscapes, we're talking about something far more interesting and larger than a vegetable garden. We're talking about the whole system, everything around your home, everything around your farmstead, and what you can do to actually make that an edible landscape. So we start, as with all design, with figuring out what you've got, what you need, and what you want, and then put that edible spin on it. Do you want to be able to harvest your own fresh peaches? Do you want to be able to have raspberries or elderberries? Do you want to feed the birds and the creatures? Because it's a guarantee that if you have these, you're going to have them. The other thing we talk about is then where those plants go. So are you talking about a brand new landscape where you're starting from scratch? That can make it easier, and yet sometimes that's a really overwhelming decision for people. And the other option, of course, is you already have a landscape, you're deliberating over replacing a hedge or a screen or needing more privacy or providing shade on these hot, hot days for your home or for your backyard. So when you think about that, instead of immediately going to a catalog or your local garden center and saying, I want a peach tree, you're thinking about what you want each of those edible plants to contribute. And the beauty of taking that approach to it is then it's not just this spotty onesie-twosie thing. You have the aesthetic quality of this landscape, you have the seasonal interest, you have the change over time, which again, it's changed from spring to fall into, of course, 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 years. And the only way really to do that is to deliberately think about the choice and the placement of those plants. The other issue, of course, is the management. And again, that's one of the things that we hear most often is people will plant something like a peach or elderberries or the brambles, and then they don't know what to do with them. We have peaches that haven't been thinned, we have elderberries that have spread everywhere, we have the brambles, which not only spread everywhere, they try to take over the earth. It gets overwhelming. So the other thing that's really fun about this is if you really do like vegetables and sort of those annual edibles as well, build them into that landscape. And part of the beauty of that is you can combine vegetables, you can combine flowers, you can use shrubs as a hedge or a screen. You have something like a hickory tree that provides the shade as opposed to a tree that doesn't really allow any edibility of any plant parts. But again, the whole point of choosing to have an edible landscape is sort of the reality check. What is your site? Do you have sun? Do you have shade? What is that soil? Because as you know, soil is incredibly important. Are you willing to put the management into making sure that you have done what you need to do to be able to get something to eat? What are you going to do about those critters? How do you want this to look? And most important, let's be realistic about how much you are going to be able to harvest and eat yourselves. A lot of times people think they're going to be able to replace their whole grocery budget with everything they grow in their own landscape. Sometimes that's possible, but remember that Mother Nature can play that final card, make it too hot, too dry, too wet, too cold, too something or other at the wrong season, and then that is going to impact your ability to actually harvest what you want. That said, an edible landscape can be every bit as beautiful as a landscape that has pretty much nothing for anybody to eat in it. There are lots of options for you to try. Some of those things you can even plant this fall. All right, Wayne, you get the next round of pictures. Your first one comes to us from Lincoln. It's a butterfly milkweed, and she says, what could be the problem? All the others are doing fine. She only sent us one picture, but I'll bet you know what it is anyway.
If you zoom in on this, it's covered in oleander aphids, which they're a non-native aphid, and they love our milkweeds. Not just swamp and butterfly and common, they hit them all. And your hose is your friend on this one.
All right, perfect. Your second one comes to us from Bellevue, and they're wondering, what are these spots on the tomatoes?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, Amy doesn't get this one.
Exactly.
This is pretty classic for stink bug damage, where they've fed on that developing fruit. At this point, I wouldn't spray anything on there because that fruit is ripe. You have to watch those pre-harvest intervals very closely when you're spraying that ripening fruit, trying to protect it.
So all they did is try to eat. They didn't put another insect in there.
No, there's no egg laying going on right now. Right. Not with the stink bugs, remember.
Yeah,
perfect. We've covered that. Eggs galore on the show about stink bugs.
Okay, Terry, your first one comes to us from Norfolk, and it's what kind of grass is this? They do have a new lawn, and there is an abundance of this one.
So I zoomed in, and it's either crabgrass or goosegrass. I couldn't quite tell because when I would zoom in, the seed head would get all blurry. You're basically going to manage them both the same. Pre-emergent next spring. You'll probably need to do 2 applications, one like at the 55-degree temperature when we normally do crabgrass of soil, and then one another 3 to 4 weeks later. Right now, you can either go out there with your soil knife and dig it up depending on how much you have, or you can use like a grass trichopter on it and get rid of it.
All right, and your second one is out at Johnson Lake. They have this particular grass. They want to know what this one is, and is this desirable?
So I wish they would have let it grow a little bit bigger so I could see the seed head, but from what I can tell, this is either, and very fitting, Johnson grass or purple top grass. Purple top grass is not going to be quite as hard and stout, but more desirable. If it's Johnson grass, then that's going to be very hard to get rid of, and you're most likely going to have to use a glyphosate on that.
All right, thanks, Terry. Amy, 2 pictures on, just one picture on this first one. This is a what is happening with these potatoes. Are they safe to eat?
They're perfectly safe to eat. You have scabby potatoes. So scab is a fungus that's in the soil, and it infects the tubers at certain times when it is the tubers being set on. There isn't a lot you can do for it. This is actually it looks bad, but this isn't the one that causes a lot of pits. So you can eat it, you peel the potato, the tuber underneath is perfectly fine. So enjoy your home-raised potatoes.
And will that stay in the soil? Do they need to rotate?
It will stay in the soil forever, so it will always be there. So you can try rotation, but pretty much every soil in Nebraska has scab in it.
All right, and this is your next picture. This comes to us from Omaha. He's got 8 bell peppers, but one of them is not producing anything that's edible. They all look like this. Soft rot on the bottom, and the other ones are producing great. This is the only one.
The only one, and the sad part about this is blossom end rot. You can see how it's always forming on the caxulin. And with blossom end rot, there's been a lot of sayings going back and forth on the cause of it. Calcium is one of the big components behind it, or lack of calcium. Keep in mind, our soils usually have plenty of calcium. What we're typically running into with that calcium is associated with water. And we've been so warm, we've been having to water more. And sometimes, because of that, the calcium actually isn't getting translocated to the fruit. It's getting translocated to the leaves because the leaves are demanding more. That means then we get a little more blossom end rot, and that would explain why one plant is a little more susceptible than the others. Nothing you can do about it. Could just cut off that bottom part and you can still eat and consume the rest of the pepper.
Okay, thanks, Amy. Okay, John, 2 pictures on this one. She has been trying to grow asparagus for 3 years. This is the environment in which it is. This is all she got this year. I think you have one more picture here, and she's wondering, should she cut it back, leave it alone? Any suggestions on this?
I would, so you wouldn't cut it back until the end of the season, and then you would, do a little pruning, cut that back when it dies back. I think giving it a little bit of fertilizer or organic matter would help, and it almost looks to me like it's the asparagus fern, which is a house plant, versus asparagus, but I don't think that's true. It's just I don't know what's going on with that, so I would. Try to I'm going to send it over to Wayne.
And he's going to be quick.
I'm very quick. Asparagus aphid. There's an aphid that gets on asparagus that causes that particular growth pattern.
There you go.
So those you need to control as you would any aphid.
Perfect. All right. John, you have 2 more pictures. and
Okay,
another
we'll see if I know
question.
the answer there or not.
Or one more picture. This is zucchini, and it's got this, and this could end up on almost anybody, but you got it because it's a vegetable. She says this is about 10 inches from the base, and what's going on, and what should she do?
Well, I zoomed in on this, and it looks like adventitious roots growing out in one clump, but I'm not sure why. I mean, when you get the stem touching the soil, you will get adventitious roots. Sometimes you get diseases. Anything down on the rest of the panel, Wayne or anyone? Why would have that
2,
giant clump?
3. It's a gall.
Yeah, it's a gall. There we go.
We all think it's a gall of some sort.
Yeah.
But that's all right. It'll probably still give her more zucchini than she can.
Yeah,
possibly eat.
there's nothing. It's not going to stop the zucchini growing.
No.
So, but yeah, so it's all those roots growing out. Something's caused that to happen with a gall of some sort.
Yep, excellent. Thanks, John. Well, our garden has really put on a show this year. Right now is a great time to visit. We've also begun to take your extra produce to donate to food banks. So here's Terry at the Backyard Farmer Garden to tell us more.
The first thing we want to do this week is thank everybody that showed up at the East Campus Discovery Days. We had a great turnout and we love seeing you and answering your questions. However, don't think that it has to be a special occasion. You can stop by and visit us anytime. When you're here though, you can see all of our garden. It is in its full splendor. We have great flowers. The veggies are really coming into their own and we are really seeing a lot of production out of them. We have some cooler weather now, so our tomatoes and our peppers and all those plants that we've been getting lots of questions about, why aren't they getting ripe, should be able to get ripe now that it's been cooling down during the day and in the evenings. So be ready for all those BLTs from all those tomatoes you're going to be harvesting. We're going to begin to look at what went well and what didn't go well in our garden to start planning for our fall and planning for 2023. So stop by the Backyard Farmer Garden and check it out.
And right now, it is time for the lightning round. John, you're up.
Okay, let's go.
Let's go. This is a La Vista viewer who says her surprise lilies never came back up and flowered after they put on their foliage.
Could be heat, could be weather, could just be you need a little more patience.
All right. This is a viewer who has a young tree, about 2 years old. It turned red and then yellow and then dropped its leaves. Will it re-leaf or does he get to start over?
Maybe, maybe not. Probably weather, heat, drought related, so it might come back, it might not. You'll have to see next year.
All right. We have a viewer who says her broccoli never puts on a nice big broccoli head. It just gives her side shoots. Why?
Probably because it gets too hot. Cold crops don't do well in the heat. Try them for a fall crop.
All right. We have a viewer who gets so many apples that he has too many. He wants to know, is there a way to treat the trees so it won't produce as many apples?
You can thin out the blooms in the spring. Do some pruning.
All right. Is there a reason why the big, beautiful hibiscus, the dinner plate ones, the buds are not opening right now? And this just came in yesterday.
That could also be heat-related, weather-related, water-related.
All right. Thank you, John. Ready, Amy?
Only if I get to see lightning on the way home.
You might.
Cross our fingers.
All right. Your first one here comes to us from Nebraska City. They had shriveled, blackened fruit that fell off of old apple trees. Should they remove the trees or just practice sanitation?
Practice sanitation. It is most likely apple scab.
All right. We have a viewer who has a cut leaf peony. It's not fern leaf, but it's a fine foliage. That it is pure white with something. They wonder what that is, and should they go ahead and cut that foliage off?
Oh, it's beautiful powdery mildew all over. You could go ahead and cut it back. You can just wait until the plant dies back. Either way, it doesn't hurt. Remove that foliage when you do and compost it correctly.
All right. We have a Blair viewer who wonders whether wet wood or oozing is common in oaks, and is there some way to treat it?
It is common, and there's nothing you can do for treating it. So some trees are just more prone to it than others.
All right. We have somebody who has asked if crown rot and crown gall are the same thing, and are they disease or insect?
They're absolutely different. Crown rot is root and rot of the crown. Crown gall is caused by a bacterium. Totally different.
All right. Excellent. Thank you, Amy. Okay, Terry, you ready?
Sure.
Okay, the first one here is a very interesting one. It comes to us from a Papillion viewer who has an above-ground pool, wants to know whether he can drain that chlorinated water onto the lawn without harm.
No.
Okay. We have somebody from Omaha who is also asking, can they cover their grass with fabric or plastic between the sidewalk and the curb to protect the turf from salt?
No.
Okay, we have a viewer who...
Say more, Terry. Say more.
We have a viewer whose neighbors sprayed the weeds in their mulch with Grazon. It killed the grass and killed the grass in more than one spot. She wonders whether aeration and topsoil will work or whether it will recover.
Yes. Aerate topsoil, and then you can reseed this fall.
Okay. Is it better to aerate first and then seed, or seed and then aerate?
Aerate first, because all those little seeds fall in there. They're protected, and they'll grow up, and they're a little more protected, and you get a better stand.
All right. Nice job. Those are really interesting questions.
I think those were very. So Lauren will be happy because he had him the last time I was on with him.
Right.
So.
Okay. Are you ready, Wayne?
I don't know. Let's see what you dug up for me.
Not my fault. You can blame our viewers. All right. We do have a viewer from Syracuse who wants to know whether you should treat for grubs in August to reduce the chance of Japanese beetles next year.
Well, first, you need to have Japanese beetles. Timing is very important. You use a curative if you're going to. Make sure you have them before you treat.
All right. And so then she is also wondering what grub treatments are not harmful to bees.
Well, when used properly, they are not harmful to bees.
All right.
So proper placement following label directions.
All right. We have a Decatur viewer who had lots of Japanese beetles, and he used 7 to knock them off. It worked and it's supposed to last 3 months. Is that true?
No.
Okay. We have a Northwest Iowa viewer who identified bald-faced hornets, and they are wondering whether fruit trees attract them and whether they die over the winter.
They will feed on the fruit as it ripens from the fruit trees, and they do die back over the winter, although not as much as we would like.
All right. We have a viewer who wants to know how those little worms get into peaches.
Well, it depends on which one. There are several of them. It could be Oriental fruit moth. They'll come in from the stem end and bore in. You'll have others that'll bore in from the outside. So it depends on where it's coming in at.
Okay. They just make their route. Okay, John, what do we have for plants of the week?
Well, we have some snacks this week, some snacks for us, snacks for pollinators. I want to start off with this beautiful curly leaf, and that is curly leaf kale. There's several different varieties, so really easy to grow in the garden. It's a biennial, so you can start it in the spring or the fall, and you can get it to overwinter and pop back out next year if it doesn't completely freeze and die back. And then we also have this western ironweed, this beautiful purple color. Ironweed's a common native plant. Loves full sun and dry, but can also take part shade. And it is self-seeding, fabulous for pollinators. Pollinators love it. This particular type is 4 feet tall, but I have seen some get much taller. We have, I think, a 7-foot tall one at our office type of ironweed. So
Yeah,
there we
it's
go.
a lovely
Anyone
plant.
need a snack? All right, there we go.
All right, Wayne, you have one picture on this first one. This is in Lincoln, and they say this is the first summer they've seen this, and any new crawling creature is no good in their yard. So she wonders what it is and what to do about it.
Well, this is a cow killer velvet ant. While they may not look all that beneficial at this stage, they are parasites of other insects, so very much a beneficial critter to have roaming around your yard.
All right, your next one comes to us also from Lincoln. I found this half-inch caterpillar in the bathroom sink and wonders whether she was picking weeds and then washed her hands, so she wondered whether it was on her or on the plants.
It probably came from the plants to her inside, would be my guess of where it came from.
And what is it?
I'm not entirely sure. When I zoomed in on this at first, I thought, those look like little holes, but no, they're not.
Yeah, it was sort of an interesting little creature. All right. Terry, you have two pictures on the first one. This comes to us from Charter Oak, Iowa, which is kind of directly across from Norfolk. They have an arboretum that has a few thousand vines growing and trying to kill off the trees. She wonders what these are, or he does, how to kill them and when.
Oh my. So this is Japanese hops. This is a very invasive vine. Basically what you're going to do is go up and look up the Iowa Invasive Weeds Guide. This will tell you exactly what it looks like, exactly the management of control. But basically what you're gonna do is from February to May, you're gonna continually mow it down. From May to August, you're gonna continually spray it with glyphosate. And you most likely will have to do that for several years. So I do not envy you what at all.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, you have two pictures on this next one. This comes to us from Cedar Rapids, Nebraska, growing in the backyard. She wonders what this is and what to do about it.
So this is green catbrier, kind of a cool plant, but it can get pretty invasive. If it is wound up in and amongst all your other plants, then you're basically gonna have to cut the bottom off and you're gonna have to do that painting of the stem with those like stump or vine killers. If it is not, you can lay it down and then spray the whole thing and then kill it that way.
All right, thanks, Terry. Two pictures on your first one, Amy. This is a mugo pine. This is in Aurora. It's on the north side of the house. Some sun, watered a bit. The soil is dry to damp. Brown needles kind of all over. And we did have some back and forth on this, but I think we can zoom a little.
We can zoom. When I look on this one, I was on this picture, I zoomed in, I was looking for dark brown spots or any lesions. I wasn't able to see anything on it. So I'm leaning toward environmental. Yes, you have been watering, but we have been extremely hot and extremely dry. Trying to keep up enough water on our trees has been a real challenge, whether we're talking evergreens or deciduous. So keep watering, and remember, keep watering into the fall until the ground freezes, please.
Exactly. All right, 3 picks on this next one. This viewer is in Ord.
Okay.
And this is a Black Hill spruce planted this spring. She did it right. She did have to readjust because it leaned in 90 mile an hour winds. Seemed to be growing fine. She doesn't think it has spider mites, but she did spray for it, but it's got this stuff going on.
So if you take a look, it's on the older needles or second year needles. They also have a purple cast to them or purple coloration. So this is Rhizophyra needle cast, which is very common in blue spruce. With this being a young tree, this would be one that I would consider doing a fungicide application next year. We would do that in late spring, and it's just to protect those second year needles. Once you spray it a few years, my hopes is the inoculum levels would be down and the tree will have grown big enough and be able to compensate for it. But it's been through a lot of stress with that 90 mile per hour wind that you had. Fungicide application next spring would be highly encouraged.
All right, great. John, 3 pictures on this. We actually had two viewers send us elephant ear questions. This comes from Hastings, and it was perfectly healthy. It's their favorite container plant. And now they're doing this. What do we have?
I think this is environmental. So if they're in a container, we have a few things that could be going on. So we have the heat and the dry, that's sort of like our favorite drum to beat this summer, but it's been hot and it's been dry. I don't see anything that's really indicative of a major disease or anything there. You could, if they're in containers and they've been growing really well, and then you get this yellowing, especially on the older leaves, you might want to look at your fertilization to see that, we have limited fertility in that container, and they might have used it all up. So you might need to add some more to keep the rest of the plant from yellowing.
All right, thanks, John. And one picture on this one. This comes to us from Newport, Nebraska. It's the first one this year. What is this? It's all over around everything. And how does she get rid of it?
So this is really fun. This is Dodder, and not Daughther, but Dodder, and it is a parasitic plant, and it's really neat. So it actually, the seeds germinate on the plants, and they actually stick little rootlets into the plant. And they actually are interesting because they can sense plants. So the new vines will weave around and look for plants nearby to infect. So it's sort of like this weird parasite zombie kind of thing. Best control would be to actually pull out as much as you can and just keep pulling it out, because it's not green. It doesn't respond to a lot of different things like other things. So just keep pulling it out.
All right, thank you, John. Well, we've all heard about the declining populations of monarchs for some time now. However, there is a bright side, and that is that you can do something about it. Let's hear from Kate about protecting our monarchs with the plants they love.
The sight of a monarch butterfly flying around one's home or visiting one's flowers brings joy to many people. Every year, these large butterflies make a spectacular and long migration that spans Canada, the United States, and Mexico. Here in Nebraska, we begin to see these monarchs on their flight sometime in May. Not only do monarch butterflies provide some pollination services as they visit flowers to drink nectar, but they can also play an important role in the food chain. While monarch butterflies are a beautiful sight to behold, their numbers have been declining. This year, in 2022, the International Union for the Conservation of Nature has declared the monarch butterfly as endangered. And while this designation has not yet officially been echoed by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services, their numbers continue to dwindle due to loss of their overwintering habitat and loss of their host plant, milkweed. Milkweeds are some of the only plants that monarch butterfly caterpillars will feed on, and it's also where the adult butterflies lay their eggs. As Nebraskans, we can help monarch butterfly conservation by planting native milkweeds and also reducing the use of pesticides in our landscapes. Not only are milkweed plants a source of food for the caterpillars, but they're also native, low maintenance, attract many other beneficial pollinators, and are also home to some unique and beautiful insects. And research has shown that planting milkweed along the perimeter of a garden or a landscape attracts more monarch butterflies than milkweed planted intermixed. So, you can do your part by planting some milkweed native to your area, keeping an eye out for those striking black and yellow caterpillars, and doing your part to conserve one of our most recognizable native insects.
Milkweed is a versatile plant that is a host to many other beneficial insects, but they are critical to helping bring back that monarch population. Wayne, you have pictures, your last round here. Your first one is from a Northwest Omaha viewer. Found this beautiful yellow garden spider among the sedums. Good one, bad one. Where there's one, are there many?
I have been in places you can't turn around without hitting one, where they're that thick. However, they're beneficial. They catch and eat a lot of different things, whatever gets stuck in their web. So keep it around.
All right, your next one is, he found this one in a backyard pond. It was dead, but didn't know that. Half an inch long, there are black walnuts. He didn't know whether that has anything to do with it, and he does wonder what it is.
No, this is a woodlouse hunter spider, so they often look a little more vicious than they are because they have rather long fangs for the spider, but that's so that they can get that through that outer shell of the woodlouse. So think roly-poly, only a little more flatter when we talk about a woodlouse. So
All right.
That's what it is.
And this is an Underwood, Iowa viewer who said, first off, this is butterfly day in his garden, and he sees these but does not know what they are.
This is a common sooty wing. So soot, like from a chimney, soot. The caterpillars feed on pigweeds and lamb's quarters, so not only do you get to have a butterfly, but the caterpillars eat some weedy plants as well.
Excellent, thank you, Wayne. All right, Terry, 2 pictures on this one, and they come to us from Burwell. And your next picture after this is essentially the same thing from a different viewer with a different tree. But she has lots of roots that come up from this tree. Any idea how to kill the roots, shoots, volunteers without killing the main tree?
So basically, just continually mowing. What you're doing is going to mow off all of its energy. You can go in and treat them actually when it's dormant, when the grass goes dormant. So you could actually do that in the fall if you wanted to with like a glyphosate or any kind of broadleaf weed killer. And then it'll translocate back down into that. But really keeping a good stand of turf and continually mowing is really your best bet.
All right, you have 2 pictures on this next one, and this comes to us from West Point, and it looks awfully familiar because I think you found this in your own garden.
Yeah, so so this is just common ground cherry, and that was what my sample was. This will have approximately 800 seeds per little fruit, so please do not let it go to fruit. The birds will transplant this. Bees like the nectar out of the flowers, and mammals will not eat it because it's in the Solanaceae family.
All right, hard to control, as you said. All right, Amy, 2 pictures on this one, and he said he has these shrooms. He wonders what they are, but they came out of nowhere, and then they completely vanished the next day. And I think maybe we have look at that.
I got a closer one. This is a great picture.
Yeah.
So these are called, common name is lawnmower mushrooms or little brown mushrooms. There's so many different types. They are breaking down dead organic matter. So we'll see them pop up with dead decaying tree roots. All of a sudden we'll see these mushrooms pop up because the fungus has been eating at those dead decaying tree roots for a while and they need to reproduce. Or it can be from thatch, lots of different things. Nothing to be concerned about. If you don't like them, just go mow them off and you're happy to go.
All right, excellent. And your next one is actually comes to us from a farm on Fremont. It's a growth on marigold stems. She sent a follow-up picture, and she's got this on now more than just this one.
Okay, so kind of like John's, it looks like adventitious roots coming off of it. I would actually call this crown gall. And so that's a bacterium. It causes prolific cell growth. Once upon a time, they thought maybe it was the same thing that caused cancer in humans, but it's not the same. Crown gall is moved in the soil. It will enter at any wound, but you can also move it if you're touching the plant, get the sap on your hands that has the crown gall in that area, and you touch another plant, you can move it right there. Typically, it doesn't cause a lot of damage, just cosmetic.
All right, thanks, Amy. We have about a minute, John. So, hydrangea in Lincoln, flowering like this, and it's supposed to be limelight. What's going on?
I think it's probably environmental. Probably whenever the flowers were forming, it was too hot and too dry. That's sort of the drum that we're beating tonight. just see what it does next year. And if it still does this, then we would want to figure out if there's something else going on.
Or a sample.
Or a sample. Send in a sample to the lab.
All right, and you have 2 pictures on this next one. This one comes to us from Kearney. Catalpa, looking like this, looks healthy, but drops an occasional small dead branch. Has carpenter ants on the lower trunk. Wonders, is this tree doomed? What would you do?
Doom, yes. This tree is dead and it doesn't know it yet. No, so we have a lot of structural issues if we see all those trunks and things coming off. So we get a lot of issues with that, and it's not a very strong tree. But once we see sort of this kind of stuff going on at the base with all these carpenter ants and sort of all the stuff sloughing off, it's a short time.
Short timer. All right, thank you, John.